everyone, and this is Dr. Shirlea North from North Star Physical Therapy. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today for the podcast, as well as for those that are new and those that are returning. So today's podcast is going to be all about returning to sport or returning to run, especially for those that are postpartum. So we're going to slant in that direction a little bit, but even for those that maybe don't have any pelvic symptoms like urinary leakage, constipation, fecal leakage, urgency, pelvic pressure, pelvic pain, prolapse, those kind of symptoms that could be limiting somebody's progression in their wellness or returning to a sport, but it could even be just from a typical orthopedic nature. Low back pain, hip issues, knee issues, feet, anything like that. So even though we're kind of focusing a little bit on the postpartum population, I want to also extend that these principles can also ring true for pretty much anybody returning to a sport after a while, or that's just always a goal of theirs. So I always like to set those short-term and long-term goals with all of my clients, really individualize it for them. And a lot of times, especially for the postpartum, they're like, look, I was able to run or participate in CrossFit or High Rocks or my group strengthening or at Burn Boot Camp or whatever the case may be. They're able to do something, play tennis, play racquetball, go hiking, whatever, maybe before pregnancy, potentially during pregnancy. But then afterwards, we're having a hard time recovering. First of all, we need to make sure tissues are nice and healed for that we have been assessed by a pelvic floor physical therapist, externally and internally, to make sure all the things are coordinating well, pressure management is there, but also taking a step back and looking at the orthopedic picture, your spine, your hips, your knees, your feet. I don't know how many folks I need to recommend proper shoe and footwear for those kind of impact, or even just walking, right, during pregnancy and immediately after. You want to have that support from the bottom up. Also soft tissue support, maybe at the belly. So during pregnancy, we have those belly bands that can be fantastic to just help with that soft tissue support so you can walk normally and not have that weird waddle, the pregnant waddle that we get. But then also a good bra. We need to make sure we're supporting that soft tissue as well, because that grows during pregnancy, and especially those that are blessed for breastfeeding. There you go. So we want to make sure the support is there. We also want to make sure we are screening out any potential alignment, pressure management issues, or even muscle imbalances. So for example, I have someone that was pregnant. We are now postpartum. They want to return to running, okay? Whether that's running as a marathon, running for a mile, making sure they can run and jump without having any leakage. There is an impact activity they want to get back to doing. Great. So we're doing the individualized postpartum care and rehab, right? Getting back into just regular functional mobility, lifting, squatting, carrying, good body mechanics, good breathing techniques, any kind of soft tissue, whether there is maybe a vaginal tear or a C-section, want to make sure that's doing okay. We're helping alleviate any pelvic symptoms within a typical day-to-day. Now that we've figured out all the contributing factors, we have worked on the body for that. We are building up resilience within strength. The next big long-term goal was to return to that sport, return to that run, return to that jumping activity. So I do what I call a return to run or return to sport screen. It is about 12 to 15 different exercises or activities that really challenges somebody some of them is within a standing position, because that's the position your body's going to be in, and going from a two-legged or bilateral position, standing equally on both legs, doing a squat, for example. You have equal pressure through both your legs. You're squatting down, you're coming back up. It's a good leg core and glute workout. You can progress those along with different foot positions, with resistance, with using your upper extremities for things, whole host of different things you can progress a squat. However, running is a one-legged activity. And so people that just go right from like the gym resistance training to transitioning to a unilateral or one-legged impact without doing any training of that kind of activity aren't going to see any result in progression. They're not going to be able to return to that sport or that run because they haven't trained it. You're like the athlete. Regardless, when I qualify an athlete, it can be anybody. You don't have to be like the D1 division, whatever, in college or a super like CrossFitter. I have moms that just want to be able to do like hopscotch and jump rope with their kids, or to go to a trampoline park for a birthday and not leak. But that's still an impact management thing. So my return to sport screen, it incorporates, yes, there are some squats and some what we call isometric holds, where you're holding a position for a length of time. So we're looking at the endurance of that muscle. So that can be a wall squat, that can be a plank kind of position, that can be that bridge kind of position. But then we also utilize things that are more one-legged, one leg standing balance, one leg calf raises. We're doing kind of some side lunges and what we call like running man drills. So they're pretty funny looking exercises and activities, but the idea is that we're getting the introduction of that jump. We're getting the introduction of that impact management. I'm testing out trunk strength, real true core strength, and with some different pressure points, or what we call perturbations. So if I push you from the front, push you from the back, I maybe compress the spine straight down towards the floor, like I put your hands on your shoulders and push straight down. Are there any kind of signs that your body's telling me of some imbalances? So if you do a little wiggle, or if you shift to one side during the squat, shift to one side during that push to the side. We're looking for all of how your body is responding to different impacts, and that gives us a path to go down for any kind of imbalance that presents itself. So let's say I have that mom, we're postpartum, we're able to say, yep, we're not having any pelvic symptom, any pelvic pressure with like normal day-to-day things, going up and down the stairs, carrying the laundry basket, carrying the kiddo, that kind of stuff. So it's okay, great. What's your long-term goal now? And she mentions, I want to make sure I can go to a trampoline park, or I want to be able to just run a mile again. Or, yeah, I want to be able to run 5 miles or a half marathon. It's great. Then our exercises are going to change. Our drills are going to change. We're going to go from 2-legged things to 1-legged things. We're going to get some trunk strengthening in a rotational component, up and down component, front to back as well, all one-legged. We're going to see how strong our calves are, how our feet are doing, because that's the first thing that hits the ground. We're going to also analyze our walking pattern. How does it change when we run? Especially for those that start to feel pelvic symptoms at a certain point in their run or a certain point in their sport, I try to have them either run maybe a little bit before coming in, or if they have a partner or a child or somebody that can almost videotape their run right around that distance when they start to feel those symptoms come on. Because it's interesting that, let's say I had a client that was like right around mile 5 is really where I get a lot of pressure. And so I had them run with their kiddo. I was an older kid. And I said, okay, hey, right around mile like 4.5, like whip out your phone for me. Or if you guys can figure out like a certain part of the path that you run on right around that time, I want you to be able to video your mom from the side and from the back, from the front, just to try to get any and all angles. And what we figured out was that right around that time, her trunk was getting really fatigued, and her kinematics changed right around there. So we worked on building up the endurance of that and keeping that mobility, but then also within that time, realizing there are some little changes for her to take a peek on right around that 5-mile marker time frame, so that when she reduces that symptom. We also had her change her shoes because she ran so much. Her shoes were really all worn down. So there can be some simple little fixes like that, but we really don't know unless we see it, unless we look at it. So the My Return to Sport screen is really comprehensive, and that's really what you want to have within that piece of your rehab, where we're building up that resilience and we're getting you either back or to a long-term goal you've always wanted to do. And because you built up the resilience in your system before with pelvic rehab, you're less likely to have any exacerbation happen. But where a lot of practitioners kind of fail is they never get somebody in that position. They just bridge them to death, or they squat them to death. They may introduce a lunge here and there, maybe a little bit of a hop, but is it multi-directional? Are we strengthening up those calves? Are we taking a peek at the shoes? Are we taking a peek at any of the other soft tissue support that's needed? Are we taking a peek at the endurance when the symptom's actually happening? So yeah, My Return to Sport, Return to Run screen has a little bit of everything, and it really is a good little pulse check on what else we need to continue either working on or fine-tune a little bit, so that way that person can get their long-term goal achieved. Just because it says return to run doesn't mean you needed to be a runner before. Just because it says return to sport doesn't mean you had to be an athlete before. A lot of our day-to-day lives, like I'd say it's raining and you're parked at the very back of a parking lot and you need to get in. How many of us are doing a little bit of run or a little bit of a jog to get there, right? Or let's say there is, an emergency and you need to run out the door. We also don't want to be leaking during that point either, or having that pelvic pressure. So it can be for everyone, not just an athlete and not just postpartum as well. So I hope you learned something here. Feel free to reach out to me, message me, email me, direct, look at my website. You can feel free to use the contact form if you have any questions, or setting up a virtual consultation. There are ways to also perform the Return to Sport screen virtually as well too. So I just want to reach out to get some accessibility to do that. But ideally you want to be in person with your local therapist. But I am more than happy to help those outside of the Northern Virginia area. I also offer 2-hour sessions too. So if you're coming from afar, we can be able to do that screen and get right into treatment as well for it. Please remember, you are more than your symptoms, and there are definitely things that we can screen out for as physical therapists because we are movement specialists, so that way you can return back to any kind of impact, exercise, or activity without symptoms. All right, and until next time.